The Indy 500 coming up. We've been spending a lot of time talking about the drivers, but tonight it is about the wives behind the IndyCar drivers. Part of our focus tonight here on The Big Show. Our friend Laura Steele will be along in a moment to preview her 13 News special report that comes up tonight at 11 o'clock. Great to have you here on this Wednesday night. I'm Scott. We'll get with Angela coming up in a moment, find out about the race day forecast. Make sure that you are weather aware and making sure that you know the next time we are experiencing some rain and some much cooler temperatures to boot. Also tonight, we're going to preview the big story, which is coming up tonight on 13 News at 11 o'clock. We've got to talk more about what's happening here in our city. Indianapolis gun violence is going through the roof. More shootings today, including a child that was shot. We're going to get into that with Alan Carter, talk a little bit about what the mayor and police chief are saying needs to happen, and it's going to be something that I think everyone in our community has got to be jumping in to try to stop what is happening here in our city with gun violence. But let's begin our evening together with Angela. Angela, really nice evening out there here in Indy.
It was muggy most of the day, but I stepped outside just briefly and the winds started to change a little bit.
Yeah.
And humidity levels coming down, and it's actually going to be a more comfortable start tomorrow morning. Instead of close to 70 to start the day, we're going to be close to 60 tomorrow morning, 75 by noon, and another day in the low 80s for us tomorrow afternoon. And dry the majority of the day. It's going to be early evening that we are forecasting our next best chance for rain and storms, and a few strong to severe storms can't be ruled out tomorrow evening and tomorrow night. So this is 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon with Future Track 13. Rain approaching the state line. It arrives, may get some damaging wind gusts out of these storms, maybe some hail, and that severe threat will continue through at least 11 o'clock. And then you can see that line of storms exit the state, but what's left behind early Friday morning, still a few lingering showers. And that's going to be the concern for Carb Day on Friday. Last chance really for the cars to get out and practice. We may see some delays out at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway because of rain that's going to fall Thursday night through the early part of Friday. I do think there's going to be some dry time, say from about noon to maybe 5, 6 o'clock. So our window of opportunity we're not going to use for race day, but we're going to use for Carb Day instead, as the heavy rain should start to come to an end for a few hours during the afternoon on Friday. And
in a moment, we'll be talking about the race day forecast because, you know, I think a lot of people are seeing the numbers that we just don't typically see at the end of May.
No, he's still going to need the sunscreen, but maybe not that extra bottle of water just because we're not going to be tracking heat.
Right. Well, that's going to be interesting. We'll be talking about that more with you coming up here on Facebook Live. Before we let you go, wanted to let you know who we're hearing from tonight and checking in from St. Louis tonight. Tanya is back with us again tonight. Mark saying, I hope Takuma Sato wins the Indy 500. He's a really nice guy. We've got Julia checking in from Shelbyville. Glenn saying good evening, Scott and Angela. Janet is with us again tonight. Teresa. Tommy is from Marion tonight. And so we've got a number of people, including Sharon from Logan Sports. We want to welcome all of our Facebook friends in tonight, joining us here at 10 o'clock, Angela.
Yes, a big thank you to everyone for checking in. We always love to give you shout outs, and we just appreciate you joining us.
You bet. All right, so Angela, we will talk to you in a little bit. Let's go ahead and now focus on our big story, which is coming up tonight on 13 News at 11. We have to talk about what is happening in our city. Gun violence continues to escalate all across Indianapolis. Alan Carter now is working on that story. He'll be fronting our coverage. That'll be team coverage tonight at 11 o'clock. And I know that Alan spent some time with the mayor today and police chief out on a walk. Tell us about what happened today in our city, Alan.
Well, this was a monthly walk that they do. They go through a neighborhood to just get in touch with some of the citizens and neighbors that live in that area. But obviously, with what we've been looking at lately in terms of the crime, I think it's really something that's weighing heavy on everyone from elected officials, police officers, citizens, stakeholders. Everyone is seeing these trends right now. And right now we're not even halfway through the year, and we're nearing in on 100 murders just this year so far. And we still have another month to go before we hit the halfway mark of 2021. Now, just to put that in perspective, Last year, we had just a tick over 200 homicides that occurred in the city. But at this rate, we may be on the pace to surpass that. And of course, historically, we do know that these summer months, they do seem to have a little bit more activity when you're talking about some of the violence that we've been seeing. And that's the concern that law enforcement are seeing right now. When you talk about the incidents that we've had recently, including a 5-year-old that was shot this morning. Now, she's expected to be okay, but this also follows a week where a 12-year-old was shot also in his home, and he did not make it, Scott.
Are we seeing any similar themes in a lot of this gun violence across our city, Alan?
Well, the thing that, elected officials that the mayor keeps pointing to is, people just don't seem to have conflict resolution, that something will happen, there'll be some sort of argument and dispute, and there's a quick judgment that happens where a firearm is pulled out, and obviously that's something that you can't take back. Those shots are fired, and you're talking about life or death situations, and they just really asking people just to think things through before you make such a permanent decision that obviously can have impacts on the person that is shot, but also the person that is holding the gun as well.
Yeah. All right, Alan Carter, that's an important story for our viewers to be watching tonight on 13 News at 11. Thank you so much. We know you're still putting your story together, so we'll see you tonight at 11. Thank you, my friend.
You bet.
All right, there's Alan Carter. He'll be part of our big story coverage coming up on 13 News at 11. Let's bring Angela back and talk a little bit about the race. So you've kind of given us a sense of what is going to be happening on Carb Day. Before we start talking about the wives behind the Indy 500 drivers, we want to ask you about the temperatures that we're going to be seeing on race day.
Close to 70, which means the majority of the race most likely will be in the 60s.
Yeah.
And early morning temperatures, I dare say you're going to want a jacket or a sweatshirt if you're one of those early birds to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on race day morning. I'm going to say chilly.
Wow.
I don't get to go out this year. I'm kind of bummed about that. But if I was going out, I would for sure have a jacket and a sweatshirt, maybe both.
Yeah, that's good to know, because you said even when people are, getting in the morning, the gates will open up, at 6 o'clock. It's going to be, in the 40s?
40s, potential for 40s. Wow. So definitely a sweatshirt or a jacket. Now we're going to warm things up once the sun comes up, a nice afternoon and a mild afternoon. I have a feeling the race car drivers and the teams are very happy with this forecast.
I would think so.
Aside from, Connor Daly wants clouds in 60s. We're going to have some sun and 60s, but all in all, a really great race day shaping up.
Yeah, that's excellent to hear. All right, so we've been hearing this great coverage from our sports folks. Taylor and Dave doing a fantastic job bringing us great exclusive interviews with the drivers. Tonight, a friend of the show, Laura Steele, has been talking with the wives of the Indy 500 drivers. And earlier tonight, I talked with Laura Steele about some of the special report that you're going to be seeing on 13 News at 11. We had a conversation about the women behind these drivers. Let's listen.
One thing that I've learned over the years of covering the Indy 500 is that this community of wives and girlfriends is so important to IndyCar, important to the drivers. They're actually stars in themselves. People know Lauren Cannon. They know Ed Carpenter's wife, Heather. They know the wives, the fans do. And so I thought that it would be nice to have a chat with them, to talk to them about, first of all, what we've all talked about, where we've been in the last year in a pandemic, how things have gone for them, and what things are like as we're kind of getting back to normal. So a couple of interesting things with that. Lauren Cannon, I asked her if she picked up any hobbies, and she said, yeah, I turned into a kindergartner teacher.
Wow.
I'm a teacher. And, Carly Wickens, the wife of Robert Wickens, who was severely injured in an accident and doesn't race anymore, but is one of the most inspiring drivers you'll ever meet. She picked up figure skating again. So she's a figure skater. She competed. So we're finding out some things. I won't tell you everything because we want you to watch, of course, at 11 o'clock, but some really interesting things that they did while they were in the pandemic and didn't really have a lot to do. None of us did, right?
Right. What is it like for these women as they are watching their significant others racing around at 230 miles an hour?
Well, I know it's daunting, and they lean on each other. And I know that we talked about just the stress of what could happen. to their husbands when they are taking it to the track at that speed and doing what they love. And Carly Wickens is the perfect example of inspiration for these women. And we will touch on that tonight as well. And because Carly Wickens' husband isn't racing now because he was severely injured, but boy, is he a fighter. You know, he wants to race again. So, but they just, you know, I know that they all have the fear, and it's a very nerve-wracking position to be in, to be the loved one of a race car driver and watching them go at those speeds. But then also the excitement of winning. Lauren Canaan, you know, talked about just how exciting it is to have Tony be a fan favorite. And they also, you know, one thing I do want to mention here, Scott, is they talked about how important the fans are. And Heather talked about just that the fans are such an important part of this race. The conversation that I had with Kathleen Kimball is probably one of the most touching parts of this story tonight, because when we spoke to Kathleen, it was before qualifications. Kathleen is the wife of Charlie Kimball, and Charlie didn't make it in for the first time in 10 years. And so that heartbreak of her knowing that her husband isn't in the race, but he was such a total class act. I don't know if you saw what he said afterwards. He says, I'm going to be home watching with the ladies, his daughter and his wife, you know, rooting on the female team. But I saw Heather Carpenter after he didn't make it in. And I said, I feel so bad, you know, about Charlie not making it in and Kathleen. And she says, we've talked to her. That goes back to this close-knit community of these drivers' wives, these women who are all together. Donald Davidson, track historian, told me that this goes back many, many years, that the wives have always been a very close-knit community for each other. He even told me that he used to go find the spot where all the wives would sit before they were allowed to go into the pits. And he said he always got the best stories from the wives. How about that?
That's great. Well, we are very much looking forward to watching your story tonight on 13 News at 11. Laura, thank you so much for joining us here on Facebook Live.
Absolute pleasure, Scott. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So great to have Laura with us tonight.
I know.
Really looking forward to her story tonight.
I'm a huge fan of hers.
I am too.
A huge fan of hers.
Yeah.
I listen to her all the time, and I'm just so happy she's part of the team here at Channel 13. And what a cool story. And you know, it's great for those families. They travel together.
Yep.
You know, they're at the same races, they're in the same places, and it's great to have that community. You know, for support and children and husbands and all of that. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's for sure. We did have one question. Paul wanted to know, is Carb Day all day? You know, in the past there was all sorts of events, including Carb Day concerts. The concerts are not happening because of the pandemic. So basically, gates open at 8, and then there's practice between 11 and 1. But as Angela's been talking about, the rain may end up interrupting some of that on Friday. We'll kind of see, right?
Well, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
I think that they get that hour of practice in. Do I think it happens, what'd you say, 1 to 2, 1 to 3?
11 to 1
11
is
to
the,
1.
yeah, they have
11 to 1,
practice,
so
yeah.
2 hours of practice.
Right.
I'm going to go say 1 to 3
Okay.
or 2 to 4 if they can make that happen. It just may be something that's a little delayed because of weather.
Yeah, well, certainly lots of daylight this time of year, so they'd have the opportunity to push it back in the afternoon. And just other folks joining us tonight, Glenn saying good evening to Laura Steele. So a lot of Laura Steele fans joining us tonight. And let's see, Kim Adams says, Sunday sounds like a great day to have a fire in a fire pit and listen to the race. Yeah, that's one of the great things about the 500. You know, everybody's got a race day tradition, and that is one of the race day traditions. You know, people enjoying, you know, watching the race or listening to it on the radio. Everybody has a different way of doing it.
Yeah, and our Lindsay Monroe did a really cool story with all of the announcers at each turn.
Yeah, on IndyCar radio.
Yeah. I don't know if it's still on our website. I'm sure it is. If not, you could find it. And if not, maybe we're going to replay it on race morning during our 7 hours of coverage. But it's a really cool story. And, you know, it's just so great to listen and how seamless they are from turn 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And it's a tradition for me as well.
Yeah, IndyCar radio does a fantastic job of broadcasting the race. And I've been to the 500 a number of times and watched the whole race, but I do enjoy listening to it on the radio because they are just a terrific set of broadcasters.
Yes,
so,
agreed.
Anyway. All right, so coming up tonight at 11 o'clock, Angela will have more about the forecast so you can make your plans. We'll look ahead to race day. We'll talk about Carb Day, this next chance of rain. And, of course, our big story, the continued gun violence here in Indianapolis. And Laura Steele's special report on the wives of the IndyCar drivers, all coming up tonight over on 13 News at 11 o'clock. We'll see you then. Good night.